Welcome to OOO, an out of ordinary podcast where we dig deep into case studies and the nitty gritty of Web3 marketing. You'll find here all the amazing people that are building Web3, so stick to us as we address their marketing secrets and learn how to build amazing products and brands. Hello everyone, I'm Alex, your fellow Web3 marketer and the host of an out of ordinary podcast. This is episode 61. If you don't already know, I'm launching a community for all you Web3 marketers. The reason for that is that I know resources are scarce and I think together we can push the pedal. A lot of you have been asking me a lot about it, so it's finally happening. As it's a token-gated community and I'm working on bringing exclusive content, this will be paid, but if you sign up now, you will get it free until the end of January. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to my guest. Dr. Asaf Nadler is the COO and co-founder of Addressable, a platform driving Web3 growth. With 19 years of experience in data analytics, Asaf previously led data science at Akamai Technologies. He earned a PhD in software engineering, specializing in big data, AI, and blockchain, and has authored over 10 publications with 400 plus citations. Hello, Asaf. How are you? And thank you so much for being here with me today. It's a pleasure to finally record this episode with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex. I've been waiting for a while for this one.
Let's go. I'm pretty sure like a lot of people already know you and especially a lot of marketers. But just to kind of kick off the conversation, would you like to give us like a quick intro about yourself and how you got into Web3?
Absolutely. So I'm Asaf Nadler. I'm one of the co-founders of Addressable. We have a Web3 growth platform, which is collecting data about wallet owners on-chain and off-chain, and enables companies to acquire wallet owners and target them by showing them ads and tracking performance and optimizing from that. And the way I stepped into Web3 was actually a long time ago. My background is I did military intelligence for 10 years, doing a variety of technical roles, mainly data sciences. And then I was a director of data science for Akamai, a public NASDAQ company, for 7 years. And I thought I was going to be doing data science and cybersecurity my entire life. But then throughout my master's and PhD, I kind of ran into my advisor, who's a well-known cryptographer. He suggested that we'll write a paper about blockchains. That was new to me, but I'm always open to learning new things. And I was taken away by storm. I fell in love with that. So 2016 blockchains at that time, to me, they looked like proofs on the wall, but like literally probability proofs on the wall. But it was, I think, such a huge technological advancement that I knew that I wanted to do something with that. So I was looking for an opportunity to combine my old passion for data and AI with blockchains. And this was somewhat the path to Addressable.
But what inspired you to build Addressable though? And what gap did you find in the market initially?
Yeah. So when I fell in love with blockchains with my past in data and AI, I wanted to find meaningful problems in the blockchain space in which data and AI can be the solution. So I gathered a team with my two fellow co-founders, Tomer and Tomer, which we know each other for a lot of years, and we share a lot of similarities. And both of us, all of us found interest in that. So we started doing a market research and speaking to companies. That was in 2022, asking them about their data needs and their biggest needs as companies. And what now might sound funny with everything that blockchain has been around in the recent 2 years, all of the companies at that time, they raised so much money. Like if you were looking at fundraising for crypto companies, at 2021, crypto companies raised more money than cybersecurity company in education tech and digital health. Now it sounds like funny for where it's at. But the biggest problem they were facing at that time was we raised so much money. We want to spend the majority of that on growth, but we're struggling because everybody's anonymous. So if we were doing growth in any other market, for instance, it was gaming or e-commerce or anything else, then at least people that would register would tell us something about themselves. But due to the culture of Web3, people are not sharing anything about themselves. So we don't even know who bought the previous NFT collection that we launched or who plays our game. And without any data, that's very, very difficult to make conclusions and know what we need to change. And this statement repeated itself with everybody that we talked to. I think it was exchanges and wallets and games. It was very, very much repeatable. And for a team like ours that spent 17 to 20 years doing big data, both for public sector, government sector, bringing together data to show insights about people is something we were very much familiar with. And we were able to see how these skills that we gathered in the past can be very, very useful for this industry that we were so excited about to thrive and grow. And this is what led us to establish Addressable.
And what does it do now? It's actually very interesting because I think I've never actually known the story, but I'm pretty sure like you've talked about it in a lot of other places. So for our listeners, like what is Addressable now and like what does it do?
Perfect. So what Addressable does is it helps companies get users. So these are typically Web3 companies like exchanges, wallets, layer 1 and layer 2s, games that whenever you ask these typically B2C companies, who are your target audience? Who are the users that they're dreaming of? What's very, very interesting is almost all of them describe the users based on on-chain behaviors. So you're asking who's your dream audience, and they go around with a very, very vivid description of it's users that own a specific token. It's users that played the game of my competitor on chain. It's users that trade very frequently. It's users that were part of a specific ICO. It's users that are doing something on chain. It's always the on chain description, which is very, very interesting. And then the follow-up question is, well, it seems like you know a lot about what these users are doing on chain. How do you acquire these users? How do you get to them? What do you even know about them? And this is where the frustration is typically shining. So it's literally, I don't know. I have no idea where they're coming from. What do they care about? What they're doing off-chain. And if I would have had this information, I was able to grow so much better. And this is a repeating story in Web3. So what we build in Addressable is a huge database that connects data about wallet owners and what they're doing off-chain on social media typically. And what the tool enables marketers is very, very simply to build the audience that you want to target, explore that and learn more about this audience as a whole, where they're coming from, what do they care about, and most importantly, target them using advertisement to drive them to your platform, track how well that's going, learn from what's working well and what can be improved, and fully optimize your campaign so that you're getting users effectively. This is what we're all
about. I think I told you already that like one of my most unpopular opinions moving forward in 2025 is that a lot of marketers are going to be the marketing sphere of Web3 is going to be more competitive in terms of like marketers and campaigns and activities and projects and so on. And I'm saying this because I want to ask you, like, how do you want to stay on top? Like, how do you want to differentiate yourself if my prediction is going to come true?
Yeah, I think the key differentiators of Addressable is you'll find many analytics solutions on the market. I think a lot of them are necessary. And analytics solutions are typically focused on your first-party data. So they're tracking what's going on in your website, what is going on chain in your contracts, and they're analyzing what is working in your specific funnel. The key thing that is distinguishing Addressable is we're mapping all of the wallets that's out there, because user acquisition is not about the users that you already acquired. It's about the users you want to acquire. So it's a lot about collecting data about all wallets, what they're doing on-chain, what they're doing off-chain. So companies can leverage this intelligence and knowledge and know how to work their way towards the audiences that they're really dreaming of. So that is one part, the intelligence about all of the audiences, which is very unique to Addressable. And the second part is that we cared a lot about making our platform actionable. So we think dashboards are really important and analytics is really important, but it's only important for as much action as you can derive from that. So it was very important for us from the get-go to not be yet another dashboard. So as soon as you build an audience within Addressable and you explore this audience and you have the lightning in your eyes saying, yes, these are the users, this is what I wanted to get to, you're only 2 or 3 clicks away from targeting these users and starting to acquire them. So it's the intelligence about all wallets and what they're doing, and the actionability, the ability within a few clicks to target these wallets and drive them to your platform.
I'm going to be asking you a couple of more questions, a bit later in our conversation regarding this and what marketers need to know. But first, I want to ask you about the challenges between acquiring, or what are the differences between acquiring users in Web 2 compared to Web 3, and what are some things you think are important to highlight as opportunities in Web 3 when it comes to user acquisition?
Perfect. So on many parameters, consumers in Web 2 and consumers in Web 3 are roughly the same consumers. It's all humans behind the scenes that are looking to feel some need, whether that's a very powerful utility or whether that's a group that you want to be a part of. I think one thing that is a very unique challenge to Web 3 is there's inherent anonymity. Some of that is because of the blockchain and how it's structured, but I think some of that is also culture. So the anonymity in the culture around not asking users who they are when they buy something from you, that is very, very unique to the Web3 space. Typically, in any Web2 marketing company, when users are already engaging with you, they feel very, very comfortable with giving you their email or telling you more about them when they're now a customer. And in Web3, that used to be a big no-no. I'm really hoping that's changing.
But wait, do you think people actually in Web 2 know that they're actually giving their data in the sense that you will learn more about them, or they're so used to it because everybody's asking for it, and that's why they're such a big barrier in Web 3? People saying no, I don't want you to have my data.
I think that with every industry that goes to the mainstream, I think most users are not thinking about that. I think the existing core users in Web3 today are super technical, they're super smart, and therefore privacy is at a very, very high priority. But if you're thinking about e-commerce, you're thinking about consumer tech, most users are not thinking about that. How many average users are going into a new website, signing in with Google, and then seeing the prompt oh, this company allows itself to collect data about your birth date and your contacts, and they're thinking twice. Most of them are not thinking twice. And I think this is what mainstream typically looks like, because I think people are trusting enough for the internet to have standards about privacy and compliance. So companies that are growing would behave based on these rules. And I think in Web3, a lot about this industry still being very, very early and very pioneering. It's being headed with clicks that are still very, very technical and very much aware. So I think the anonymity is one part that is a challenge. And another part that is a challenge, but it's actually an opportunity, is there's tons of open data on the blockchain. So consumer user can be better understood, which this is not at all the case in Web 2. If you're starting a Web 2 startup, you're starting with no data. You have nothing. The only thing you can know is who stepped on your platform, but you don't have a platform just yet, right? And in Web 3, there's this opportunity in which the blockchain has a lot of open data, which you can analyze as a business to understand where there's opportunity in the market. Is somebody making money? Is my competitors' consumers deviating or drifting away from that, so I can start to acquire them? There's a lot of open data, but there's the challenge of collecting that.
Are you referring mostly to like money transfers, or like money, the way money works within the blockchain, or like what kind of other data are you referring to?
Yeah, so at the most basic level of that, it's money, right? It's transactions that are going from a specific consumers to other consumers or to businesses. But I think at a higher level, it's more than money. There's a famous exercise in which you hand an analyst the log line of a Visa record, of the swipes of a credit card, and tell them, like, tell me what do you know about this person, right? So you go over the Visa logs and you're saying, okay, this person spent money at a women's shoes store, and they bought ice cream over here, and they went to this specific mall. You're starting to get quite an image in your mind of who this person is, right? At the bottom line, it's money. But when the money has some colors to it, it tells a story. And I think especially in Web3, because a lot of the projects and a lot of the businesses, they have a very strong color associated with that. Think about some NFT collections and some DeFi protocol, or even some tokens. Ownership or participation in some of these protocols, it's more than blank money. Like knowing somebody's owning dollars or euros. It's literally about what are people buying to tell you more about their habits. And this is, I think, a huge opportunity for growth in this space, which is very, very unique to Web3.
Something that I was thinking about, like when you were talking, is how Facebook is targeting right now, not targeting, but how Facebook is developing all this data about yourself. So, for example, if I look at baby clothes, Facebook might think I might want to have a baby, or like I'm having a baby, or if I'm looking at like certain stuff, they might think if I'm married or not, and so on and so forth. My question for you is like, is there anything similar to this in Web3 yet, or we still have a bit to work to get there in terms of technology, especially?
I think the only other place that can take place is Web3, and there's a reason why you mentioned Facebook and not spoken very generally about Web2, because some of these giant tech companies, they want to own the data all to themselves, right? They don't want that to be open data because that's their competitive advantage. And I think some of the notable examples of that are Apple launching Scan, which is limiting mobile companies from knowing who's downloading their apps or what can they learn from that to grow mobile adoption even further, or the Facebook data that is being stored in a centralized way on Facebook. I think what's very unique about Web3 is that it's open data that's available for everybody without any centralized authority being able to take control of this data and not grant that to everyone. So it's somewhat of a fair rules of the game. Everybody knows that data on the blockchain is transparent and everybody can use it. And different companies that can build smart strategies about how to understand users' behavior, obviously, to a gap of anonymity, because it's wallets behind that. It's not names of people. Can use that to infer trends, in as a result of that, help this industry grow.
But are we there yet, or like we're not there yet in terms of like the technology for a company like Addressable, for example, as we're talking about it, as you do attribution and you do people can also like can target audiences to grow their user base. Are we there yet with such predictions, let's say, or we're not there yet?
I think we're there yet. I think we are there, and I think we're only seeing improvements in that. But any company that is using Addressable at the moment, that's part of the value that they're looking for from the get-go. I never launched anything. I don't have data yet. I might be launching a new token or a new game or something that I want to do well with. What's the data that I can look into? I can look into some other competitors of mine or people that advertise something similarly and learn more about their users. What are they buying? What do they care about? How do these users self-describe? This is very, very meaningful knowledge for people to plan their campaign based on that. In almost every company that is active on Addressable is doing.
Something that I've been saying for like a long time as well is that a lot of people have been telling me for like especially the longest time, especially when I was at the beginning of like when I got into Web3, everybody was like, Alex, but Web3 marketing is so different. And the more I'm in the space, the more I realize it is a bit, it's not different. It's just the tactics are different, which is totally different discussion, I guess. So, and then sometimes I see people that are saying, oh, I'm a Web3 native. And I'm like, what is that? But I actually learned it in East Bucharest. There was a guy on a panel with me, and he told me I'm a Web3 native. And I'm like, what does this mean? And he said, I have a tech background. I was a developer, and now I do marketing. And I've only done marketing in Web3. And I was like, it makes sense now. Like it starts to make sense. And I brought this up because I also believe that like Web3 users are also Web2 users as well. They're also the same people, just recycled, not behaviors, but recycled interests or whatever, geolocations. I wanted to ask you if you think there are like some more, in your opinion, there are like more particularities that you find between like Web2 users and Web3 users, except for like money and privacy, let's say, that we have already touched on.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the marketing, two additional kind of distinct behavior. One is I think a lot of the projects are still about infrastructure. And infrastructure is a more complicated sell, right? It's always about selling a higher level value that people need to kind of weigh in on and think before they buy something like that, like whether they buy it or invest in that. So almost by definition, this creates a much longer conversion funnel compared, for instance, for e-commerce, right? I mean, if you look at commodity projects that are being bought online, it's not really how crypto looks like, right? So it's more about creating awareness, getting the mind share, building a community, because the more complicated the product that you're selling, and most Web3 products are very, very complicated. Even the games, the mechanism of owning a token to play a game, it's a very complicated mechanism. So that is one thing that is somewhat different about consumer behavior. So it's typically more about kind of going down a longer funnel. And I think another one, which I really hope changes, is that the space is still very much associated with distrust, with rugs that were going around, and with the inherent anonymity. People are not that soon to trust, and that's not happening almost in e-commerce, right? I mean, you see a brand that you recognize, you don't think people are going to rug you. So I think another thing about user behavior is that consumers are very much distrusting. They're trying to understand more about your company before they're going to work with you, both because of the history and because it's what's at stake. Like if you're investing in a DeFi lending protocol, you want to know that your money is going to stay there. You're actually taking a big risk. So I think with that, companies are also, what we're seeing is they're investing a lot in brand awareness, not necessarily through advertising, but through conferences and face-to-face meeting and anything that would get users to trust them even more. I think these two parts are very, very unique to the Web3 space consumer behavior.
What are something that a lot of, I think everybody in my audience has always been asking me. So I'm trying to get this with every speaker that I get, or at least like to get them to explain as much as possible, and to give as many examples as possible. So one of the questions I have for you is like, what are some of the most successful campaigns, user acquisition campaigns you've seen on Addressable? And I know you also have a couple of case studies on your website as well, which might be interesting to mention, let's say.
Yeah, so the obvious part is that we're targeting wallet owners using ads in companies can experience the return on investment in performance, right? Whether they're trying to optimize for a cost per click by getting users to their website, or whether they're trying to optimize for conversions, for getting people to log in with their wallet or sign up for something or actually buy something at the end. I think that what we're seeing across the board is because we're targeting on the right audiences and because we're analyzing the data live in optimizing for that, we're typically improving performance by 30 to 50%. And you can already see that 1 to 2 weeks after you're starting to run. So with the case studies you have on the website, what you can see is different use cases in which we optimize for cost per click, cost per engagement, cost per action across a variety of different verticals. You can see some exchanges, you can see layer 1 and layer 2s, you can see some wallets, you can see some games, all of which it's roughly the same story behind that. It's about us finding the right audience so you don't need to spray and pray. This is a huge frustration that somebody's putting money on ads, but they have no idea what they're targeting. And then most importantly is getting the feedback loop of what's working, what's not working, and adjust the campaign, which this is our optimization does that on a daily basis, which is called Addressable Plus. So that's the typical. I mean, whenever people think about Addressable, they're thinking about targeting wallet owners using ads. So the typical ROI is the performance. But I identify another ROI, which I think is another one to focus into about when talking about success stories. And the other ROI is there's so many marketing teams in the space that are struggling, and I really want comment from the audience after the call if this is something that is touching on the right spot for them. But it's typically what we see. It's a 2 to 3 people marketing team that are trying to capture what in Web 2 would take a 20 people team. It's a 2 to 3 people team that is doing PR, community, events, social, organic content for the website, design, paid ads. They're trying to take on everything. And it's an impossible task. Sometimes they're even taking on more. They're even responsible to support the listing of the token in some specific exchanges. It's an impossible task. What Addressable does with these users, it's not only optimizing their performance, but it's an end-to-end solution like you typically feel when you're speaking to AI, in which, oh, this is the audience that I want to target. Great. Here's the audience. It's ready. What's next? Oh, this is the creative. Perfect. Here's a campaign ready for you. Let's launch it. The campaign is set to go. And on a daily basis, the marketing team is getting feedback about what is working, what is not working. We just launched a new feature for trends. So very easily at the end of every day, the marketer can become the champion of the organization, saying, I can truly report to the CEO about what's working, what's not working. Oh, in Ukraine, we have this campaign which just improved by 30%. Maybe we should invest in some local language over there. Oh, the new landing page that we were using, that is performing 20% better than the previous page we had. That was some nice work. The Wallet Connected Mobile, something is dropping over there. But I can go at the end of the day and get these 3 to 5 insights, which is getting me to be the champion. And I think that's part of a bigger trend of marketing leveraging AI to do 10x. And this is where we want to be for a lot of Web3 companies. So it's not necessarily just about the performance and getting 30 to 50% better, which is obviously still very, very important. But it's also about saving the time and the ability to accomplish more. So I think this is where we're seeing a lot of the ROI at the moment.
I think Addressable should do some data tool for content creators to sing. Because I've been complaining about Spotify and like all these like Web2 tools because I think they're great, but they're trash at the same time. I think it gives like really bad data. I mean, very incomplete data, not like bad data. But something I was looking at my Spotify Wrapped for this year, and I learned like the most interesting thing. They told me that The biggest audience that I have is from the US, which was something that I already knew from last year. The oldest one is from the UK, and the youngest one is from Nigeria.
What can you do with this data?
Nothing. But I think it kind of, I do have an idea when it comes to like this like youngest audience. My wild guess is that there's a lot of improvements to be done in terms of like content for like a young audience that's very inexperienced, or they're still trying to like learn the ropes of Web3.
Yeah.
That's my guess. And for the oldest, I'm not so sure like if age is actually a factor of improvement in any way, but I'm still digging into that information. But I just thought like as a fun fact, I think it was interesting to see, let's say. I saw that you didn't mention any names. So I'm gonna put your case studies in the description of the episode anyway. But then I'm going to ask you something else. So probably I'm going to try to get you to give me some maybe more concrete answers. One of them is like, what do you think, how do you think people are responding to ads in Web3? And the second question is like, what's, I'm not going to ask you about like your favorite story or like favorite company to work with, but maybe what is your favorite, pillar from Web3 that you think is most exciting for you to work with at Addressable?
Perfect. So I think to reflect on how users in Web3 are looking at ads, I would take a step back to the part that you were asking me, what's different about consumer behavior in Web3? A lot of what's different is there's a lot of distrust. And if you're thinking about the people you're buying from, not just in Web3, but in general, you either want to buy from people you know or you want to buy from people you trust, right? So unless you know someone, the best way that you have to sell to them is becoming a well-known and established brand. That's the only way. So if I'm going to download a new wallet, I'm going to place some of my funds in a new exchange, I'm going to spend a lot of my time in playing a new game. It's either I know the founders, and this is the reason why I take interest in that and take the risk, or it's a well-known brand. So let's assume that in Adressable right now, I feel in need of a payment solution. Which payment solution will I turn to? It's either someone I know or like a top 3 brand that comes to mind. So with that said, and this is reality in not just in Web3, I think everywhere, but in Web3 the risks are even higher. So this is more evident. I think that in order for users to decide to buy a token, to decide to take the risk, they need to be familiar with the brand. If you have a rock star founder, like in some layer 1, layer 2s, you're in luck, right? Because with organic work and some community and some things that are going underneath the table, you're going to rock it. But that's not the case for 95% of companies. That's reality. If your founders are not rock stars on social media, they're not in the top 1% of mindshare, which this is the common case, you still need to build a brand. Otherwise, you wouldn't sell to anyone who's not a friend of you. And what I see with users is users are typically behaving well to messages that are resonating with them. If they see your message and the message is interesting to them, they would follow on the message, regardless of whether they've seen it organically or seen it through ads. As a case study for that, I think I'm seeing a lot of the top companies in the space. This is where I'm not saying names again, but if you look at top layer 1 to layer 2, top wallets, top exchanges, top games, they're all running ads. They're all running ads, right? I'm feeling very, very comfortable to giving names that are not necessarily addressable customers, right? But if you're looking at top exchanges, Coin is running tons of ads. Crypto.com is running tons of ads. You're looking at top wallets, 1inch is running lots of ads. MetaMask are running lots of ads, right? If you're looking at top layer 1, layer 2s, they're all running ads. If you look at the top 10, they're all running ads. And there's a reason for that. It's a very competitive field. It's a fight for a brand. It's a fight for the trust. And especially when it's financial assets, what users want to know when they're buying it is that's going to be hype, that's going to be a hit. They want you to run ads. They don't want you to be in the background.
Mm-hmm. So what's your favorite pillar in Web3 to work with? Do you have one?
Which one of the verticals? I think the one I like the most, and obviously I like everyone, but I think what interests to me a lot is layer ones and layer twos. And the reason for that is I think they have so many needs on acquisitions, which is it's just fascinating to me. So to me, layer one and layer twos are the Web2 equivalent of cloud infrastructure. So the way for them to grow is for developers to build on top of that, and for these developers to build successful applications so they are driving users. And as a result, the infrastructure is all succeeding because the token has a good dynamics, right? So what they're thinking of at the same time is how they're acquiring developers that would build the top dApps. And this is a very, very competitive field. Like if you're looking at top blockchains, it's super competitive to find top developers and top dApps to be building on top of you. Then it's appealing to retail traders and users to buy the token. And the more people that are buying your token, the more easy it is to capture everybody within the same ecosystem. And also what we're seeing is a lot of the top blockchains are more involved in the apps that are building on top of them. So they're not saying, oh, we lease you the infrastructure and have fun with that. No, they want to be invested in your growth, both because if they're not doing that, then some other blockchain will capture your wonderful application. So they want to be more involved. And the other way is showcasing, oh, look, that's amazing. SushiSwap is building on my blockchain. That's a good way to drive awareness as well as complement apps that are building on top. So if you're looking at that, I think it's one of the most interesting cases of user acquisition. They're trying to capture at once both developers, both retail traders to buy the token to grow the ecosystem, and users for almost every top application that is building on top of that. I'm not aware of any equivalent for that in Web 2. And for these reasons, the layer one and layer twos are the one that fascinate me the most.
When it comes to, let's talk a bit more like about more data right now. And as I know, like this is like a very big passion of yours, let's say. One of the things I want to ask you is regarding like marketers. When they're entering Web3 and not only, what are some key data points or metrics that you think anybody should pay attention to? And what are some mistakes you see them do most often?
So on the metrics, I think most Web3 projects are essentially B2C. They're acquiring retail users to essentially buy the token and use the app. So it's 90% are the same metrics that you'll see in any B2C company about acquisition. It's the CAC, it's the LTV, and other metrics as well. I think three metrics that are somewhat unique and very prevalent in Web3 that are very much important. One is the space is filled with bots, right? There's so much that's going on with bots all around, both in socials and in on chain, because there's a lot of open data, right? When you launch a token, everybody sees who buys the token, and everybody sees if there's a run in the bank, if nobody's buying, right? So it's in the best interest sometimes of the person running the protocol to make it seem like there's lots of bots around. But on the other end, these companies also want the truth. They also want to understand like how much of what I'm seeing is real. So one metric, I refer to it in some tweets of mine as BWI. It's browsers with wallets installed. So this is the rate of website visitors that has a wallet installed on their browser. For instance, they have MetaMask installed, or they have another extension on their browser. And this rate is typically a good indication to tell how much of their traffic you're getting to your website is real crypto users traffic versus bots. So this is one metric. Another metric is the cost per connected wallets. I think a lot of time with acquisition activity, a lot of that is depending on your product, right? And different products behave very, very differently. But I think where the lines typically stand with user acquisition in B2C, it's the cost per connected wallet. I think that's the equivalent of a cost per login or a cost per sign up. And I would say that the moment that somebody decided to log in and connect their wallet, this is where the user acquisition is ending. That's the end of the top of funnel. And now it's all about like how well is the product engaging and retaining. So that's, I think, is another important standard metric. And the last one is because the industry is very, very early on, a lot of projects are still not at the point in time in which they're maximizing revenue. So a lot of what they're looking for is for the attention so they can capitalize on that later when they're launching. So I think mindshare in this case is incredibly important because the way companies are building themselves in this space is they create the attention, they create the hype and build the community and the audiences, and then launch when the attention is at its max, in which at least the assumption is that mindshare would be in correlation to the prices of the token. So mindshare is another very, very important one, which I think is very unique to this space.
But mindshare is a bit vague. It's not like a metric you can like see.
Yeah.
That feeling, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think mindshare is definitely an abstract term, but I think it can be broken down to how many people are speaking on your behalf, how many people are speaking about your brand compared to other brands that are building something similar. So that, yeah, I definitely agree with you that it has a few interpretations, but I think there are some companies that are building some of these interpretations, and any of these is important if you believe that attention is the way to later on capitalize on the token, if that attention is correlated with token demand.
One of the things that I've asked somebody that was on my podcast like recently is that, so in Romania a couple of years ago, I mean like 10 years ago, probably like it's still available, but I haven't worked on this market for like, and especially Web2 for like a while. There was this platform that would actually catch the data with like anything that was like UGC or PR and so on. And I thought like that was really interesting. And I know a lot of companies were using that. Is there an equivalent of that in Web3? And do you think that would be important to have? Like personally, I would die to have something like this, but I'm not so sure. What do you think of other companies as well?
So I'm not sure which company you're describing or what's the solution, but I can break it down into two, and you'll tell me if which one are you referring to. So one side is attribution, right? I mean, a lot of the attribution today is not direct, right? Direct attribution is whenever you have a link for buying, typically produced by an affiliate or some promoted article. Somebody is clicking the link and then buys, right? And then it's very, very clear, where did you get the buy from? And ideally, in the world of media buying, where do you want to buy more media? What we're seeing today is that a lot of the sales cycles are indirect, right? You have an influencer that is, or a UGC that is speaking on behalf of your brand, not necessarily with the link attached to that. And then it becomes very, very difficult to attribute and understand eventually where the purchase came from. So that is one part of that. And another possible interpretation is social intelligence. It's about the ability to map out different trends and chatter that are taking place typically on social media, and look at different UGCs that are going around and estimate what's the sentiment towards your brand. Is it trending up? Are more people speaking about you? Which of the two are you reflecting on, or something different?
It's more on the second side. So, for example, a lot of people wrote about like the out of ordinary hackathon that happened in Bangkok. And all I could see is like if somebody tagged me or tagged out of ordinary on Twitter, and so on. But it was so hard because at some point I was traveling, I was either sick, I was like on a plane, people were writing, they're like a lot of like 1,000 other notifications came. I couldn't see them all. So what I would have loved to see, except for anything that's like centralized, where like people just left reviews and so on, like proper reviews on Luma, and that like I can actually see in one place. But I think everything else is so scattered, and I would have loved to get some like UGC at like that was like a hot take, because right now if I send a form, people have had time to digest it, but like I wanted to see the hot take and what was the sentiment. And I think a lot of like companies would actually benefit of something like this. So my question was actually, is there anything like this in Web3, or do you think we would benefit, or others except me?
So I think the biggest thing that is taking place on Twitter, not just for Web3, is Radar. So Radar is designed especially for that. So you can provide Radar, which is just an app on Twitter, a native app that they're developing internally. I believe it's still on beta, but you can provide it with your brain that they will collect information about how people are speaking on your behalf. So this is picking up. And on more of the actionable side of that, like how can you actually take this knowledge to actually drive actions? We're building some of that. It's obviously not necessarily for individuals that want to know how the brand that they're building is working together, but for some bigger companies that want to take action immediately when they're seeing something like that. So that might be a more useful tool, because Radar, as far as I know, it's not well connected to kind of other systems for taking actions based on that.
Interesting. I'll definitely look more into it. Where do you think it's, or where do you see the biggest opportunities for growth in Web3 marketing space right now?
So the cliche for that is AI. I think marketing, like any other department in corporate organizations and startups, is being revolutionized by AI, enabling people to do 10x the amount of work. In marketing specifically, I think it typically falls under one, content generation. I think a lot of content generation is AI, both images and text. Lead gen as well, the ability to collect information about prospects and react to them in a very, very tailored approach. That's as well. Personalization, that's as well. And I think a lot of the marketers in this space today, some of them are native, some of them made it from Web 2 into Web 3. But I think what's unique to everybody is it's a space of startups. Ultimately, there's very little marketing teams that are tens of people in the marketing squad. So everybody are overwhelmed with tasks. And every marketing team that I'll find within Web 3, there's typically more tasks than resources. That's the situation. So I think the biggest opportunity is for marketing leaders in every company to think about how they're using AI to do 10x across the entire board. And obviously, we at Addressable, we're trying to make AI more accessible for campaign management. We think there's that's one of the very important tasks that people are running. But I think it's true for every marketing task. I think it's true for event management. I think it's true for social management. I think it's true for community management. I think it's really, really true across the board. So I think the biggest opportunity is with AI for marketing.
What do you think are the biggest trends in AI we should pay attention to as marketers, obviously? Are there any right now?
Yeah, so I think the obvious ones is everything that's going on content generation, right? You see Sora and you see Midjourney and you see some other tools for generating content. In lead gen, I think the uprising of Clay and some other tools for doing lead generation and acquire leads, that's another one. But where I think the biggest trend is coming, and I think it will take some time until it propagates to startups. I think it's more on the enterprise side today. It's orchestration. It's not just limiting yourself to how does a single person takes their own day to day. Like, I'm a social media manager, so how do I create more posts or more tweets using AI? Or I'm responsible for organic content, for technical documentation. How do I produce more of that? The orchestration level is really about, I'm a CMO or I'm heading a marketing organization. How do I make sure some of the people I work with are AI agents, right? How do I deploy a full team that is taking on my strategy and building an organization that's just the big part of that is AI. So I think orchestration is probably the biggest trend of that. And if people are looking for resources to learn more, I would point out to Salesforce to see what they're doing with their AI agent strategy on go-to-market, which is not just marketing, it's also sales and customer success, some other things. But I think for some people in Web3 that will see that, they will see how probably the biggest trend is on orchestration. I think we'll start seeing a lot of teams, a lot of marketing teams that has AI agents as some members of the team.
Something I wanted to mention, it's definitely not connected to orchestration. I mean, it is somehow, but like not exactly the same thing, is that a lot of companies have a lot of like CEOs have complained to me recently that a lot of marketers that are trying to hire, they're giving ChatGPT generated responses to their briefs. So I wanted to see your take on that in this like context of like using AI for marketers. And also, I know you also mentioned to me that the Web3 space is not mature enough. And I wanted to see what do you think we need to get there?
So to me, it's very baffling that someone would reject a candidate for using ChatGPT. I would do the opposite. If I'm seeing a marketer that is afraid of ChatGPT and not using that, that to me would strike them as a person that is finding it difficult to adapt to a new reality.
I think the reason why they do that is because, like, I think it's a wild guess. Like, I don't know exactly the details, but like my guess is that ChatGPT would probably give you like very similar responses to the same problem, so that then they would see like a copy paste in each resulted brief, and then they would might want some creativity or something like a human touch, let's say.
Yeah, that's the worst, right? That's like copying from someone else at the exam without having any flexibility to adjust to what you want to do, right? I think using ChatGPT is a must. I think that anybody that's not using that or even not using that is enough is not generating the 10x that they can do. What I think is important is that you have the ability to orchestrate your tasks. So if you do product marketing or if you're responsible for generating content on your social, you need to be able to take ideas end to end. I think that is the most important thing. So you need to have criticism. You need to be able to take feedback from other people and embed it into what you're doing. But if you are able to do that and do that effectively, I think these are the marketers of the future. I think that's exactly what it should be. So the problem isn't that these people are using ChatGPT, is that they're copying an answer from somewhere else and don't know how to fit it to what is really required. So in a sense, they wouldn't know how to collaborate with people. They don't have the criticism to know if their own output is good. I think that's the point. It's not that they're using ChatGPT, but using it as is.
And the second question was like you mentioned that we haven't matured enough as a space. What do you think we need to get there?
So if I'm thinking about the Web3 space more broadly, most of the companies within it are startups, right? A lot of them are still in early stage, still looking for product market fit, still looking for utility. We're not seeing a lot of enterprise companies. We're not seeing a lot of companies that are doing kind of a more growth rounds. And I think this reflects very, very much directly about what this marketing teams in the industry looks like, right? It's still very much a startup mode. I'm really hopeful that a lot of the startups that we're seeing today in Web3 are growing to become sustainable businesses, that they're finding a good revenue model that works, they're finding good utility for their users. And I think what we'll see as a result of that is Web3 going from the pioneering stage in which it is today, which is mostly startups trying to invent something in the future. I think that's very much necessary to a more mature field in which we're seeing growing companies with real businesses and more opportunities. So this is typically what I'm referring to when I'm thinking about the maturity of the space.
Do you see AI adding or like changing the skill sets of marketers?
Absolutely. I think more marketers would need to shift from hands-on specific work to strategic work. I think that would be the key thing. So if you're a media buyer, a technical writer, a social media manager, a community manager, and today you're doing a lot of that hands-on, you're directly responding to people, you're directly writing the documents yourselves. What I think will change to a lot of people is they will start taking more strategic role, think about the strategy, think about the KPIs, think about the tone of voice, think about the automation, think about all of that, and leverage AI agent to carry out the strategy to something that is much, much more effective.
Asaf, we don't have like much time left, but like, do you have an unpopular opinion about Web3 or Web3 marketing? I'm putting you on the spot right now.
I have an unpopular opinion, and I'll say it just so you have a highlight so people can roast me on the stage on social. I think there's a lot of hate within Web3 marketing towards some companies or even specific marketers advertising or promoting something in a very complicated manner. Like, how come you're selling this infrastructure with this words of like ZK and decentralization? Nobody understands what it's about. And somewhat, I'm not saying it's toxic because I think people are ultimately meaning something good, right? My unpopular opinion is I don't think marketers are stupid. I think that if you see websites that are promoting something that you don't understand, you might not be the audience of that. And I think in Web3, what we're seeing a lot, and it's because of the financial meaning of what a token is that some companies are promoting something that seems to be a product for a consumer. It seems to be a game. It seems to be a usable app. But the audience are really after is retail investors. They're looking after people that would buy the token because it sounds to them that they're investing in something fancy that is going to be a big part of the future, that is super revolutionary, that is super visionary. And I wrote about it in a tweet of mine called the Tale of Two Funnels, which is joking about some games having two funnels. One that they're publicly speaking of, which is, we want gamers to come and play. We want more daily active users playing the game. But another one, which is effectively the one that most resources are going for, which is the retail investors. We want people to see the game, say, that looks like a cool game. I'm not going to play it, but I think others are going to play it, so I'll buy the token myself. So my unpopular opinion is if within the Web3 marketing communities, we're seeing messages that we think are too complicated and no consumer will ever buy it, maybe it's not designed for the consumers. That's my take on that.
I'll definitely make a note of that and like try to highlight it. I would be very curious to see what others are going to say. Do you have any resource that you would like to share with the audience today? I know you already mentioned like two of them, but I wanted to see if there's anything else that like comes to your mind.
So I recently came across a website called martech.org that is speaking about marketing tech and some trends in marketing tech. And they recently released a study of how AI is going to change marketing. So they collected that from a few case studies, some carried out by Salesforce, some carried out by others. So I think in addition to some other resources that we chatted about, like case studies on the website and some other things, I think that for anybody that's looking to see how AI would revolutionize marketing, I would very much advise reading some of the bullet points within that. And I'll share that in the chat so you can share it with everybody.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And the last question for today is, where can people find you?
So I'm everywhere. People can find me on Twitter, Asaf Nadler, just my full name. That's the handle. I can also be found on LinkedIn and on Telegram. And I'm pretty much attending most of the conferences in crypto. I really like meeting people face to face. So typically, when it's conference time, I love for people to reach out to me and for us to meet face to face. So Twitter is preferable, and if you prefer face to face, let's just book time at some conference. Always love chatting to marketers, learning about trends and what's going around.
For anybody listening, Asaf is amazing. I've met him many times, so I can certify to that. Thank you so much for being with me today. I think it was a super cool chat. I loved having you here, and I can't wait to continue the discussion with Tomer, who's the CEO of Addressable. And for anybody listening, he's gonna be the next one after Asaf here on the Out of Ordinary podcast. Thanks again, Asaf, and I'll definitely meet you face to face again at the next conference.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
Thank you so much for listening to our Out of Ordinary podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to hear more content like this, then open up the podcast app and click on the follow or subscribe button. It takes less than 5 seconds and is the single best thing you can do to support the show and stay up to date to more marketing strategies that are being used in the Web3 space.